And that's the problem. There's been continued discourse in the literature about what we're dealing with here. And I don't think we've even had a straight answer. And if there has been one, please somebody tell me, because I haven't seen it. But the formal text continues to read that we're dealing with living individuals here. But if they can't think, if they don't have brain waves, and we've seen a lot of doctors put that out, that how alive are we talking? The discussion is important. It defines how we deal with sick people. I mean, we can't even call them derogatory terms on the air because we'll be fined or taken off the air if we do. And let's be honest, even if they do have heartbeats, if they breathe, even eat their prey, which is us, I might add, aren't they by definition dead? They certainly aren't living, going to work, producing anything in society, and they won't anytime soon. They're not going to develop some skill over the afternoon. They're not even useful. They're simply dangerous. But still, we have well-meaning liberal friends. I understand it and want to keep these, and I'm going to say things, alive. And they are things. You want to keep them around. And they're not even just taking up resources. They're literally taking away space from people who are trying to function. And at this point, I don't know if we have enough ability to even take care of the what's here now. And they're everywhere. So people are taking matters into their own hands. They have a failing police force, lack of medical care, and continued reports of losses of power. This is a dynamic event. It's not waiting for decisions in Congress for sure. And people are not going to wait around for that. They're going to do something about it. Excuse me. We haven't had a lot of sleep here, so I'm running on empty. But I want to get all this stuff out before we get moving forward. We discovered a firearms right group in Boston that had taken to the streets in protest. They were open carrying firearms and openly dispatching any of the sick that they saw. And they used megaphones announcing if anybody needed help that they were available. And that's the kind of stuff that you're seeing. And this was a protest for an arrest, I believe, and it was in Cambridge, Massachusetts, of an individual that had protected a neighborhood woman that had been attacked. When the elderly woman she was attending turned without warning and attacked her, she made it out without injury, but only because of this Good Samaritan that is now sitting in a jail cell. So we decided to make some calls and found this isn't an isolated event either. It's believed that thousands of individuals are currently being held for what is being described as murder, and the best way we know how to call it is a ghoul. We spoke with one man who has been locked up since the beginning, before we even understood what was going on, and this was in Atlanta, that could possibly even predate the outbreak in Philadelphia. And since the courts have been closed due to quarantines, these individuals are sitting in jail for crimes that I'm going to say they definitely didn't commit. Whenever I read any court case, I did not see why somebody would be languishing in a jail cell for what was described. Now, early on, I get it. There was a different sort of situation going on. There was a different discussion. People didn't understand what was going on and probably made decisions. But there came a point when we knew what we were dealing with, and they're still taking the same actions. It doesn't make sense. So, opponents of releasing individuals or allowing for simple destruction of an infected have what appears to be a logical debate, though. They see an incoming resource war. The problem is, right now, supplies are dwindling fast, and we're seeing the unrest. Some shelters are starting to go without food, and the people there are getting desperate. It's feasible if you have no hospital and no police to stop you. What's to stop people from turning firearms on each other? And the question is how despicable human beings can be once left to their own devices, when all the words like civilization and controls that we have in our lives disappear. What's left? What will people do? And I think we're in for quite the wake-up call. A lot of people say that people should just make the right decisions, and if you're in a situation like this, what is the right decision is the real question. And I think that people get in these situations and they don't know. They once you lose your religion, your humanity, your morality, all these things that people tend to say today or take for granted, you realize that there's only few things that actually keep us cohesed as a civilization. And how do you keep that control? Or is it something you can do? Can you keep control after the connective tissue is lost, when people are left to their own devices to make decisions? We've seen quite some stories. Was it the Argentina soccer team that ended up cannibalizing people because they had no food? What happens when that's next? There is a place where we basically stop being human in general. So the action that we need to take is to keep our humanity and to remember what we're doing here and try to have some cohesion. But I'm wondering how good, or if that information is just falling on deaf ears. So, and let's be honest, for a while it appeared that people were pulling together, but it seems like it was kind of just a calm before the storm. You can't stay locked up in a shelter for a week or more without food and not expect people to start looting. The problem is there isn't much to loot. Shelters now are no longer just places to protect, but they're now becoming housing. They're now becoming places that people are developing places to live. People getting sick from backed up sewage and what looks like homeless shelters springing up in football stadiums. And it's hard to even describe it. We're not fully aware of what's even going on in them. There's very little information that comes from these because they're not centers of communication. There's no phone system for each person. You can't call people on the phone and ask them what's going on. We're trying to do our best to get information from them, but it is difficult to know what's going on everywhere, and it's very anecdotal for each situation. We do know that most of these do not allow firearms of any kind. One shelter in Nashville, Tennessee reported they must have let in an infected individual, and when the person turned during the night, they went bad. The next morning when civil defense staff woke up, they were presented with what was described as a bloodbath. They didn't know the full details, but over half of those present would describe it as no longer alive. Police didn't even have enough ammunition to destroy them. They had to abandon the camp and lock it up with signs saying it was too dangerous to enter. And that leads me to the question, has this happened elsewhere? Hospitals. Where else are they just being stored waiting to be released? One of the criticisms that many have had is that we are not dispatching people. And what do you do for these places? Do you just blow them up like some have said? And if they do that, how much ammunition do we actually have? Are we going to be blowing up our own cities to find a cure for this? That doesn't seem productive. So frustratingly, instead of addressing these conditions, National Guard in some areas clear out houses, deeming them unfit to live in, which is true if they are filled with dead bodies, other conditions, and they force these tenants to go to shelters that are already overloaded and failing. They are just following orders, but it seems like something needs to be done, and the only people that can do anything are those living there. Trucks that were once shipping supplies are starting to run out of fuel. They don't have food. They're trying to deliver on highways that are filled with cars that hit an infected individual, pieces of metal that flatten tires, and if you crash, there's nobody coming to tow you away. It's becoming a battle of attrition. And how long before people in camps start doing supply runs and, or even worse, raiding local farms? The options are vast, and none of them are appealing. I just think with even allegations like rape, theft, killing in these shelters, that it's time that we just stop sending people to them. And I'll ask those out there, what do you say? If there's a way to let people know, let them know. I certainly won't be going to a shelter. Many of us are just staying in the studio as long as we can, but who knows how long that's going to last before supplies run out and we're going to be forced to go to someplace else. The emergency broadcast systems, we're being told, will kick in soon anyway, but I doubt they're going to be reporting on what we're reporting on, and that's going to make quite a hole in the system. We need the real information to get out to people, and what's being broadcast by, I'm going to say, government agency, I'm sure will not have the level of authenticity that it requires. The concerns of things like propaganda, the idea that the continued wording that we're getting ahead of this, that things are going to be okay as long as we stick to it, that narrative is starting to break down. So like good timing, a civil defense report now advises that living in a tent is dangerous. They claim that bugging out does not help. I guess they say tents don't protect against infected attacks, especially in numbers, which makes sense. I get it. And tents have been found in the woods where people have been attacked. So, but of course, perfect timing on that report. Thanks for getting it to us after everybody is trying to get out. And again, it's a push to push people to these shelters, to get them in controlled environments, and taking that grasp back on the world as it right now continues to fold. On the rumor front, the rumor mill, remember, we have none of this is officially confirmed, but the word is that North Korea has been gone. Some people are using the words wiped off the map. Reports of a massive explosion in Hamhung and then Nampo in the middle of the night. One report said it might have been a nuclear, but scientists said they didn't get any reading that confirmed that. But the blast was very large, so there's no word whether that was some sort of self-destructive moment or if there was some sort of explosion of any kind, storage. You know, a lot of things have been left out that people have not attended to. So there's really no answer, no thing that we have to say. The first word was that there were people fleeing Chongjin in the northern part of the country, and when people who were running from the city refused to turn back, they were fired upon. So that's what we have there. South Korea is suffering and has had stations towards the northern border just north of Seoul since the city completely was overrun. They declared martial law and the area is completely under control of the military. They are, word is right now is that they have been shooting infected on site, but how long that's going to last is unknown. A lot of them have basically boarded up or made basically military cities is how I understand it. One soldier's report that he was at the northern border and there was nobody guarding it. He still did not pass through the border area, but said they didn't see any activity from the North Korea front. There's no idea if there are any survivors or maybe if there is even just a breakdown in communication. But one reporter posted that North Korea now belongs to the dead. That's his words, not mine, so I am simply the messenger. So as for the United Kingdom, there's no word on the royal family or parliament. We're told they went into hiding, yet they opened their broadcast channels to the public and enacted emergency radio broadcast. As it was described to us, broadcast restrictions were completely lifted, that there is basically no control at this time. Right afterwards, those channels became very busy with survivors connecting to each other. They say the countryside is looking good right now, but to completely avoid major cities, it sounds like they're setting up mobile camps. They still seem very positive in the situation, though. It really shows their resilience. There is debate about attacks and possible unrest, but for now they're all working together and seem to be putting disagreements aside. Many people are simply moving northward. On one of the transmissions we picked up, there was one gentleman, it was a very thick accent, broke in and said, with the weather they have, there's a better chance the sick would just wash away by the end of the week. That's good stuff. I would like to have your weather if that's how we're going. So, I'm checking here on all these other places.
This is a message from Civil Defense Authority. You are currently under quarantine conditions. Do not leave your house for any reason unless you are authorized an essential worker. If you or anyone you know has been bitten or injured by an infected individual, you are to report to your nearest shelter for treatment immediately. Anyone harboring the infected will be prosecuted. These instructions will repeat. This is a message from Civil Defense Authority. You are currently under quarantine conditions. Do not leave your house for any reason unless you are authorized an essential worker. If you or anyone you know has been bitten or injured by an infected individual, you are to report to your nearest shelter for treatment immediately. Anyone harboring the infected will be prosecuted. These instructions will repeat.
No full word on Germany, Italy, or Greece. We know in Africa they were telling people publicly to dispatch anyone that they felt was ill. This caused an uprising, and there were a few of them. No word on what the leadership looks like. Much of the Middle East is the same way. They have been having basically public executions. Southern parts of Israel were having immense problems. They had requested assistance. They considered any of their big cities basically lost to the infected. We have no word from Russia at all. They aren't saying anything. They have been active. Reports were that they were taking action of some kind, that there was something going on. Much of their communications are basically emergency, same as basically civil defense, like a broadcast system that basically tells everybody what to do, and the information that they have is very similar to what we have. They did amass troops at the western border, but these troops have not moved. They've simply been holding their positions with instructions, I'm guessing, to deal with any infected that they see. They haven't, there's no entering or leaving the country at this time, which is pretty much a going rate, since most of the areas there's, obviously no flight plans, nothing of that nature. There are planes flying, but nothing commercial. One thing that we're hearing more and more in the Western world is those that still use nuclear reactors. There's been an outcry to shut them down fully to prevent potential problems in the future. Many of the opponents of this have said that they use a great deal of this energy to keep things running. But in a few months, the fuel for backup generators is going to go bad, and that there is concerns that there may be no way to shut them down if a problem does occur, like reactor overrun was one of the wordings that we had heard. So that's become a questionable priority. I don't know what that's like in the U.S., but we're hoping that they take that information accordingly. There was, early on, we knew of a couple of reactors that did shut down their operations. What that all entailed, we weren't made aware of, but that basically a couple of them were shutting down, but not all of them are. Some areas require a great deal of it to run in a way that's effective, and it's a lot more effective than, say, more of the other fuels that we have that need more transportation. So for instance, things like coal, natural gas has pipelines, but they need people to run those, so those have to be constant, and electricity is kind of a one-to-one thing. So if it's not running, we don't have it. And obviously, since we're broadcasting right now, somebody is running something. So yeah, I'm thinking that a lot of people want to hold that off until as long as they can. Hopefully nobody holds on to it too long. Okay, okay, let me read this. This must have just happened. There was a truck full of the sick that was driven to the State House in Washington. The driver got out, opened the back door, and just ran, letting them all out. I guess there was a lot of confusion because he basically jumps out, he opens the doors, and nothing really happens until a couple of minutes, and then all of a sudden these infected began pouring out. There's no word if this was a protest of any kind. Military have been defending this area. Fences were put up. The executive branch had already been evacuated to a secure bunker. They have one in Virginia. No word of who was responsible for this or what their actions or intentions was, if it was some sort of protest or if it was an attack. The individual in driving the vehicle was able to escape, and for now everything is on high alert. Nothing else has happened at this time, but we'll see if we see more of that. Washington has become something of a stronghold right now. Military presence has been extremely high, but it seems minimal in comparison to what you'd expect, as most of Congress had left. Some of them had taken up residence in a bunker, and most, the way I've been described, had returned home to either deal with the situation or support their family. We were able to get in touch with someone who was in intelligence, and he explained a great deal of what was going on. I asked, basically I was very upfront of, why are you telling me all this? Isn't this something of a security risk? And he said flatly, you can tell all the monsters you want, it's not like they're organized or can do anything about it. And that's very true. So it's made a very weird intelligence conundrum that people can basically say whatever you want out loud, and there's no opposition to really stop you, and the idea that the opponents who are listening don't really understand what's going on. And it's an odd opponent, but he says it's one we can deal with. So he sounded very confident in his summation, although he did refuse to give us any further details or personal information, which I took to mean there's basically still things that they want to hide. Okay, I've been running pretty much nonstop here for well over 48 hours, and as you can probably tell, I am crashing. One thing I've noticed from people talking is that they aren't getting any sleep. So my advice is, did it make sense in the context of the situation that you're not getting any sleep? But if you can hear this, you need sleep. You need the amount of time that you need, no matter how much you're working yourself crazy right now to do what you need to do. I know you have things. You have to take time for yourself. If that means walking away from where you're at to go to some place, take some time to yourself and get the rest you need. If you can't do it where you are, Find a place you can. A place you can get a reprieve from the nightmare going on around us at least. We need some sort of break system where we simply just shut down and don't think about everything. You need some time to sit down, maybe laugh, cry, whatever it takes to get some of the things out of your system right now. We have been so socially charged in the last, it's been a while. It's been longer than I want to come to terms with, to say that we need to get better. And it's been rough, and you need to look yourself in the mirror and say, you're not crazy, there's nothing wrong with you, this is normal, you just get yourself together. And since I'm a proponent of practicing when I preach, I'm going to do that right now. Unfortunately, there's nobody else to broadcast in the station right now. We're kind of at a bare bones here, but I took the liberty of putting some sounds together for you to listen to. I am not going to be long. There is still information that's coming in. I see it coming in my desk. I am simply going to ignore it for right now. Take a couple of hours at most. I just need to get the edge off and burn off some of this coffee is really what it is. So yes, I'm going to be back. I want everybody to stay safe. Make sure you get the word out to everybody. The more people that know, the more people we save.